My name's Stephanie Fosh and I'm the Managing Director of Pure Human Resources, and today we're going to be talking about managing frequent absenteeism. So as a minimum, you need to check your contracts of employment and you define how somebody reports sickness absence and whether they're eligible to any company sick pay or not. You obviously have to pay statutory sick pay, so that's defined by the government. You may have a policy that says above and beyond that, and in which case you want a policy that's separate to your contract. And ideally you'd have a attendance management of sickness absence kind of policy, something we can obviously help with, but it sets out your expectations that says this is what we consider to be reasonable attendance at work, and this is what we consider to be unreasonable, and this is how we're going to manage attendance. So you're setting out your stall to employees so they know what to expect. So one of the first things you find when you start managing absenteeism within your business is that actually absenteeism looks like it gets worse before it gets better. And the reason being is that that's because your accuracy around recording tends to improve. So hence it looks like you've got a bigger problem rather than a better problem. But that's usually a good sign because it means you are capturing as close to 100% accurate records as possible. So it means that your managers are aware, they're clocking when somebody is absent and recording it, making sure the individual is carrying out return to work interviews. And then you can run reports. Again, particularly if you've got information recorded on a system, you can run reports. So you could set up triggers, for instance. So tell me when somebody's had more than 4 periods of sickness absence in a rolling 12-month period, or tell me when somebody's had more than 20 days. People who obviously have a long continuous period of absenteeism tend to be more noticeable. And again, you can obviously manage those. And as a rule of thumb, we would typically suggest that you make a referral to occupational health when somebody's been off sick for at least 4 weeks. As a mental health condition, I'd probably use 2 weeks as a rule of thumb. So obviously employers are bound by the Equality Act, and part of that, one of the protected characteristics is an element called disability. HR professionals, employment lawyers, a lot of employers are all familiar with this concept. The important bit, we always need a medic to confirm whether somebody actually does have a disability, and the threshold for disability is very low. So it probably means that you'll have a number of employees within your business who do have a disability under this definition, and that's where referrals to occupational health are really important. And when you ask for that referral, that's something you're actually asking the medic to confirm. So does this person have a disability as defined by the Equality Act? And if so, what are the reasonable adjustments that I need to make to their workplace to enable them to do their job? What you want to do is make sure the employee is aware of the fact that you're tracking absence, because in many ways, if you've got somebody who is off and maybe they're not as genuine as they could be with their sickness absence, it's making them aware that you are monitoring, and that in itself is quite a positive step. It means people are much more conscious. So, talking to them, making sure that there's anything you need to do. If there is an underlying condition, for instance, stress, anxiety in the workplace, then you do have some obligations around, for instance, carrying out stress risk assessment. So it's making sure that things that you need to do are done before you kind of enter a formal process. It depends on what's in your contract of employment. A lot of employers, particularly smaller, and most employers in this day and age, will have a default provision in their contract that says you are not entitled to company sick pay, you are only entitled to statutory sick pay. So that means, from a practical sense, you're not entitled to any pay for day 1, 2 or 3 as your first day of absence. Statutory sick pay will step in on day 4. The level is set by the government and amended in April every year, so there's nearly always an increase there, and you're obligated to pay statutory sick pay. If you decide to make a discretionary payment on top, above and beyond statutory, then you are perfectly entitled to do that. But again, we would always advise that you write to the individual, setting out the parameters of why you're doing, what you're paying, and how long it's going to last for. So and it is a rule of thumb, but kind of for us, it's that if somebody's been off continually for 4 weeks, then that's really when you start making a referral. We always use a synergy around the children being off school for 6 weeks. You know how difficult it is to get them ready to come back to work after a 6-week period. It's the same with people when they've been off sick for a long period of time. It might be surgery, it might be an illness, whatever it is. But if people have lost that routine of getting up, getting ready, then actually it's really difficult to rehabilitate them back into the workplace. So at 4 weeks, you want a rough idea of how long that absence is going to go on for, whether they're likely to return to work in the foreseeable future, and if they're going to need any support to return to work. For something around a mental health problem, I probably would be a bit more responsive, and 2-week continuous period of absence, we would use it. If it's in relation to infrequent, short, regular absenteeism, then you may want to dispel the fact that there's an underlying reason, and if there is an underlying reason, finding out what that is and then establishing if there's any reasonable adjustments you need to make to the workplace. Yeah, it's a really common question. Most employers will have an absenteeism problem at some time. We can obviously start at the beginning of the process, review contracts of employment, redo those if necessary, help with policies and procedures in terms of staff handbook, sickness absence trigger points, as well as advising on the practical application of either collecting data or reviewing a case. We obviously have a preferred occupational health supplier, so we can make that referral to an OH company should a company need us to, and then give you some feedback around implementing some of the actions required following it.